Stephen Colbert has signed off from The Late Show, CBS cancelling the programme in what it says was a purely financial decision, and the programme bowed out with an all-star cast.
On the 21st of May, 2026, Stephen Colbert walked off the stage of the Ed Sullivan Theatre for the last time. 9 straight years as the #1 late-night show in America, Emmy winner, millions of viewers every single night, and CBS still pulled the plug. They told the world it was about money. But 3 days before they canceled him, Colbert said something on live television that made very powerful people very uncomfortable. The last night in the cathedral. Let me take you inside that final night, because what happened on that stage was not just a goodbye. It was a statement. CBS did not announce a single guest for the finale. Not one name. Fans outside the Ed Sullivan Theatre were guessing all day long. Some people said it would be George Clooney because he was the very first guest back on the 8th of September 2015. Others said Barack Obama. Some even believed Pope Leo XIV would show up because Colbert had actually written a personal letter to the Pope asking him to come on the show before it ended. None of those people walked through the door. Instead, the show opened with a running joke where Colbert pretended the Pope was backstage, refusing to leave his dressing room. The audience was laughing but also confused. And then Paul McCartney walked out. Think about that for a second. A Beatle in the same theater where the Beatles made their American debut on the 9th of February, 1964. McCartney handed Colbert a framed photo from that original Ed Sullivan appearance. The show ended with Colbert, McCartney, Elvis Costello, John Batiste, and the full band performing Hello Goodbye together on that historic stage. But the real gut punch came before any of that. Earlier in the night, Bryan Cranston, Paul Rudd, Tig Notaro, Ryan Reynolds, and Elijah Wood all pretended to crash the show from the audience, each one claiming they deserved to be the final guest. It was funny, it was chaotic, and underneath all of it, you could feel something heavy. Because everyone in that room knew this was not supposed to end this way. CBS extended the finale by 17 minutes, running it until 12:54 in the morning. That was the exact same amount of extra time David Letterman got for his finale back in 2015. And honestly, that detail alone tells you everything about how much history was being packed into one night. But here is the thing nobody in that audience could ignore. The biggest late-night show in America was shutting down, and the network that owned it had never once given a real answer for why. 3 days that changed everything. To understand why Colbert's show really ended, you have to go back to the summer of 2025, and you have to pay very close attention to the dates. On the 2nd of July 2025, Paramount, the company that owns CBS, agreed to pay Donald Trump $16 million to settle a lawsuit over a 60-minute interview with Kamala Harris. This was not a small deal. Paramount was in the middle of merging with Skydance, and that merger needed approval from the FCC. Paying Trump $16 million while you need a favor from his administration is the kind of thing people notice. 12 days later, on the 14th of July, Stephen Colbert opened his monologue and called that payment exactly what a lot of people were already thinking. He called it a big fat bribe. On live national television, to millions of viewers. 3 days after that monologue, on the 17th of July, CBS canceled his show. Now CBS said the cancellation was, and I am using their exact words here, purely a financial decision that was not related in any way to the show's performance, content, or other matters happening at Paramount. And look, maybe you believe that. Maybe you think the timing was just a wild coincidence, but a lot of people did not believe it. Senator Elizabeth Warren publicly said America deserved to know if the show was canceled for political reasons. Trump himself celebrated the cancellation on Truth Social, saying he loved that Colbert got fired. And Colbert himself gave a response on air that night that became one of the most replayed moments of the entire year. He read Trump's post, paused, and then said, "How dare you, sir? Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go blank yourself." Except he did not say blank. The network said it was about money. The timeline said something else entirely. And the people who knew Colbert best were about to make it very clear which version they believed. The #1 show that lost too much money. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was the highest-rated late-night show in America for 9 consecutive seasons. That is the longest winning streak in the entire history of the Late Show franchise, going all the way back to David Letterman. In the key 18 to 49 demographic, Colbert had been beating The Tonight Show since 2019. During his second-to-last week on air, the show pulled 4.1 million viewers for the Strikeforce 5 reunion episode. That was the biggest weeknight audience in at least 3 years. The Letterman episode that same week pulled 3.7 million. These were massive numbers for late-night television in 2026. And on top of all that, just 2 months after CBS announced the cancellation, Colbert won the Emmy for Outstanding Talk Series at the 77th Primetime Emmy Awards on the 14th of September, 2025. It was the first time a broadcast late-night show had ever won that category. So CBS wanted the public to believe they were canceling a 9-time #1 Emmy-winning show purely because it was losing money. They cited a $40 million annual loss. But Jimmy Kimmel publicly called that number, and again, I am using his words, beyond nonsensical, because it completely ignored the affiliate fees that local stations were paying to carry the show. Jon Stewart, who knows this industry better than almost anyone alive, did not buy it either. On The Daily Show, Stewart said he did not think the answer could be found in some smoking gun email or phone call. He said the answer was in the fear and pre-compliance that is gripping all of America's institutions at this very moment. And then David Letterman, the man who built the Late Show franchise, said the thing that nobody else at CBS would say out loud. The Lying Weasels and the Brotherhood. In an interview with the New York Times in May of 2026, David Letterman was asked about the CBS explanation for canceling Colbert's show, and he did not hold back even a little bit. Letterman said, and this became the quote that defined the entire controversy, "I'm just going to go on record as saying they're lying. They're lying weasels." Letterman showed up on the 14th of May for one of Colbert's final week episodes. The two of them went up to the roof of the Ed Sullivan Theatre and started throwing furniture off the building onto a giant CBS logo below. It was comedy, sure, but it was also rage. And at the end of his segment, Letterman looked into the camera and said, "To the folks at CBS, in the words of the great Ed Murrow, good night and good luck," and then added a word that I cannot repeat here. That episode drew 3.7 million viewers, but the moment that really showed what Colbert meant to the industry happened 10 days earlier, on the 11th of May, when all 5 members of Strikeforce 5 reunited on Colbert's stage. Now, if you do not know Strikeforce 5, here is the short version. During the 2023 writers' strike, all 5 major late-night hosts lost their shows at the same time. Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, and John Oliver started doing regular video calls to check on each other. And those calls turned into a podcast that raised money for their out-of-work staff. When they came back together on Colbert's stage that May, it was not just nostalgia. John Oliver called the cancellation some fresh bullshit. Jimmy Kimmel pointed out that nobody asks Ryan Seacrest to defend Wheel of Fortune the way people were asking Colbert to defend Late Night itself. And Jimmy Fallon said something that I think perfectly captured the sadness in the room. He said, "I never thought it was a job when I was growing up. I just thought Johnny Carson came with the television set." On the night of the finale, both Fallon and Kimmel aired reruns of their own shows so they could physically be in the Ed Sullivan Theatre audience to watch Colbert sign off. That has never happened before in the history of late-night television. Two competing hosts giving up their own airtime so they could be there for a friend. But while Colbert's colleagues were showing up to honor what he built, CBS was already moving on. And the person they chose to replace him reveals exactly what the network actually cared about all along. The Ghost of Johnny Carson. Starting on the 22nd of May 2026, the day after Colbert's final episode, CBS began airing Comics Unleashed with Byron Allen in the 11:35 time slot. Now, Byron Allen is a fascinating figure. He got his start performing stand-up on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, on the 17th of May, 1979. He was still in high school. He went on to build Allen Media Group into a multi-billion-dollar empire that includes the Weather Channel, the Gryo, a stake in Starz, and a recent majority stake in BuzzFeed. But here is what matters about this deal. Byron Allen is not replacing Colbert. He is buying the time slot from CBS and selling his own ads. CBS is not spending a single dollar on production. Industry reports say this arrangement saves CBS more than $150 million a year. So when CBS said canceling Colbert was purely a financial decision, what they really meant was they did not want to spend money on late night anymore. Period. They did not cancel the #1 show because it was failing. They canceled it because doing nothing was cheaper than doing something great. Colbert and Allen actually met for breakfast on the 14th of September, 2025, the morning of the Emmy Awards. According to Allen, they talked for hours about their shared love of comedy, talk shows, and Johnny Carson. When Allen officially got the time slot, Colbert sent him a text congratulating him and making a wistful joke about wishing they could tell Carson about the whole thing. And look, I have nothing against Byron Allen. The man built an empire from nothing. Comics Unleashed has been around for 20 years and has featured over 550 comedians. But let us be honest about what is happening here. CBS took the most prestigious time slot in American television, the chair that Ed Sullivan sat in, the desk that Letterman built, the stage that Colbert turned into a nightly institution, and they handed it to a syndicated comedy roundtable because it was the cheapest option available. David Letterman's reaction to the swap was 5 words. They don't want to spend any money. And as all of this was happening, the place where all of this history was made was about to face its own uncertain future. The secrets inside the 100-year-old theater, the Ed Sullivan Theatre, was built in 1927 by Arthur Hammerstein as a tribute to his father, the opera legend Oscar Hammerstein I. The architect Herbert Krapp designed the whole thing in a Gothic style with stained glass windows, a hidden central dome, and over 1,000 seats. This was not just another building in New York City. This was a cathedral built for performance. In the decades that followed, Elvis Presley stood on that stage and changed music forever. The Beatles made their American debut in that room on the 9th of February, 1964, and the entire country watched. The Jackson 5 performed there. Ed Sullivan hosted his legendary variety show from that same stage for over 20 years. And when CBS bought the building in January of 1993 for $4.5 million, David Letterman turned it into the permanent home of late-night television. Every major moment in American entertainment history touched that theater at some point. Colbert gave Architectural Digest a tour of the theater in May of 2026, and what he showed them was incredible. There are trap doors built into the stage. There is a secret door on the balcony that most people have never seen. The balcony itself is where Ed Sullivan used to hide teenage girls who were screaming for the Beatles because he did not want them disrupting the main floor. Behind the set, Colbert kept a photo of his father, Dr. James William Colbert Jr., who died in the Eastern Airlines Flight 212 crash in 1974. He also kept an original banner from the 1963 March on Washington, the same event where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his most famous speech. Colbert's mother attended that march while pregnant with him. The set itself is being donated to the Museum of Broadcast Communications in Chicago. But the theater has no announced next tenant. It is a protected landmark, which means it has to remain a performance space, but nobody has said what comes next. Colbert told Architectural Digest, "The fact that nothing's gonna come in here breaks my heart." He paused and then added, "But someone will figure it out, and I wish them all the luck in the world because they're gonna love it." Meanwhile, his 200-person staff was not so lucky. Every single one of them lost their job the day after the finale. Colbert himself said on the Strike Force 5 podcast that nobody was getting paid past that final night. And in the middle of all of this loss, Colbert said something in an interview that stopped me completely. The man who didn't get to pick his own ending. When Colbert ended the Colbert Report back in December of 2014, he chose the date himself. He walked into his assistant Amy Cole's office, asked when the last production day of the year was, and she said December 18th. He sat down at his desk, and the entire finale came to him in one moment. He knew exactly how he wanted it to end, because he was the one ending it. The Late Show was different. Colbert told People magazine that this time it was not his choice, and not his date. He said the ending did not come to him all at once, the way the report finale did. It came in pieces, over months of meetings, and then recently, it all just came together. But the most revealing thing Colbert said was this. He told People, "Maybe CBS saved my life, because it takes a lot of bone marrow to do the show every day." He also revealed that before he even accepted the Late Show job back in 2015, he went through 4 months of therapy to manage the anxiety of taking over for Letterman. And I think that is the part of this story that people miss. We talk about the politics, we talk about the money, we talk about the ratings and the timelines and the Trump connection. But at the center of all of it is a man who poured 11 years of his life into a show that consumed him completely. And then, one day, somebody else decided it was over. On the night of the 19th of May, Jon Stewart showed up with 2 motorized recliners as a retirement gift and joked that Colbert was going to enjoy watching Matlock in them. But then Stewart got serious. He told Colbert something through a pre-recorded bit that I think perfectly sums up what The Late Show meant and what its ending really represents. Stewart said, "Stare it down and laugh." That is what Stephen Colbert did every night for 11 years. He stared down the news, the politics, the pressure, and the fear, and he made people laugh before they went to sleep. And when the network told him it was over, he did the exact same thing one last time. Colbert's next project is co-writing a Lord of the Rings film with Peter Jackson. His son graduates college. His brother is getting married. Life goes on. But late-night television just lost something it is never getting back. And the real reason it happened might be simpler and scarier than any conspiracy. It is not that CBS could not afford Stephen Colbert. It is that, in 2026, telling the truth on television every night became more expensive than any network was willing to pay. That is the full story behind the end of The Late Show. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I really want to know, do you believe CBS when they say it was only about money? Or do you think something bigger was going on behind the scenes?